Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of Manifesting Muslimah. I'm your host, Zara Pedersen. And in today's episode, I'm going to talk about something I don't think I've actually ever discussed on this podcast, but it's definitely something that comes up within my one-to-one coaching and in my membership and some stuff that we're talking about quite regularly on those platforms, which is nervous system regulation. This is, I would kind of say that right now it's having its moment on social media. More and more people are becoming aware of like what it means to have a dysregulated nervous system, what it means to have a nervous system that is in fight or flight or constantly panicking, and what it means to try and reset it or get it back on track onto something that actually is helpful and beneficial to you. So first of all, like the nervous system, like what it means to have a dysregulated nervous system is the nervous system. Like it is the physical thing in our body, like the whole nervous system in our body that is sending out information and telling the body how to react at certain points and certain things and certain triggers. And when it becomes dysregulated, it means that somehow, somewhere along the line, it learned something that it took as potentially a threat, as a stressor, as something completely different. And now it continuously reacts in a specific way that may not benefit you. Now, that was the very dumbed down version of what it means to have a dysregulated nervous system, okay? I am not a nervous system coach. I am not specialized in nervous system regulation. So please, don't come to me with all of your big questions. The way that I'm going to talk about regulating your nervous system today is definitely more from a religious and spiritual perspective than the physicalities of the nervous system in general and stuff. So please keep that in mind as I am sharing today. It doesn't make what I'm about to say today any less important or it doesn't invalidate what I'm about to say, but it just means that if you're asking me about like the biochemical, physical, I don't know, whatever around the nervous system, I might not be the one that will be able to give you the precise answers. Okay, cool. I just want to say that out, like just to begin with, because I do like to talk about a lot of different subjects on the podcast, and I don't need to be an expert on everything in order to contribute to the conversation. And I want you to really also think about that if you're thinking about starting something. You don't have to be an expert. You can also just choose to be a contributor. And at this point, I'm just contributing to the conversation around nervous system regulation. Okay. So if you've been for any moment of time on TikTok, Instagram, wherever you're scrolling and getting your social media timeline fix, you'll probably have come across a few posts. Well, I don't know. It depends, I suppose, on what your algorithm is like. But my algorithm is obviously very much into, self-healing, religion, spirituality, all of those things. So I get quite a lot of content around nervous system regulation. And there's one aspect of nervous system regulation that I don't hear a lot of people talk about. In fact, I think I've only ever really come across one other person who's mentioned it, and it's the spiritual connection in nervous system regulation, which I feel like is quite overlooked, and I know why. Well, I can guesstimate why, I can't know for certain because nobody has come out and directly said it. But I think because of the kind of world that we're living in today, unfortunately, a lot of people have this, like it's almost taboo to talk about God, and to link God and religiosity and spirituality to something like quite physical in our bodies. And so it can be very difficult for certain people, I suppose, also because it's a lot of like therapists and like people of that nature who will talk about nervous system regulation. And I think it may be a little bit taboo in some of those industries to bring God into the equation because not all of their clients are going to believe in God. So to have sort of that kind of conversation might to them feel a little bit scary. Now, this is, again, I'm just guesstimating here, okay? I don't know this for certain because not a lot of people have spoken about it, but that is my guess as to why we're not hearing about it. But here's the good thing. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a shrink. I'm none of those things. I very deliberately work around Islam and religion and spirituality. And I personally have had, and still in some aspects have on some points, a dysregulated nervous system. And I have been able to regulate a lot of my nervous systems, again, because of my religion and my spirituality and my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, this is not something you will have heard a lot of people about, or maybe you have. If you have, please share it with me. I'd love to hear other creators talking about this. So if you know people who've mentioned this before, please go ahead, tag me in their stuff, send me the link, do all of the good stuff, okay? So when we have a dysregulated nervous system, as I said again, in like the dumbest way ever, or like in the most dumbed down layman terms way, it's basically because we've experienced something before that makes us feel a certain way. We might feel really uncomfortable around certain things or certain topics of conversation, certain people, certain situation, whatever. And our body, our nervous system has learned it, and now it's going to start firing up around those things. One of the triggers that is happening for a lot of people is social media. Social media is really good at dysregulating our nervous system. It's very good at pushing us out of alignment. And that, we're never really going to, I don't think at least, going to get rid of social media. So it really helps to understand how we can get ourselves back on track again. Now, if you listen to a previous episode of mine, I think it's the one that comes before this one, about our superpower as Muslims, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Well, it's kind of the same thing again here. As Muslims, when we have a dysregulated nervous system and we're feeling kind of like super stressed, anxious, wired, all of these things that comes with having like a dysregulated nervous system, we can actually tap into that superpower as well. And that is one of the missing keys in how to regulate a nervous system. So you've probably seen a lot of people talk about, oh, you do EFT tapping, oh, you journal, or you do breathing exercises. Even the ones where like, oh, go and hug a tree. I don't know if you've seen those ones, but even like going outside and literally hugging a tree can help regulate your nervous system again. So there are lots of like ways that I would call sort of like hippy dippy woo woo ways. And again, listen, no hate, because I'm a hippy dippy woo woo kind of gal myself. So I love EFT tapping. I love hugging trees. I love breathing exercises. But none of those things for me would have a lasting effect if I didn't also have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of those things would be sort of like temporary solutions to an ongoing societal problem. It would be a temporary solution. Putting, and I'm sure I've used this example before, putting a Winnie the Pooh plaster on a gunshot wound. Like, it might take some of the bleeding, but it's still bleeding. Like, that plaster is not going to last forever. So what we need is something that is far more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it has more impact. We need something that is more impactful. We need something that lasts for longer. And this is where we as Muslims, specifically as Muslims, but maybe even all religious people in general, have this amazing advantage of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you want a regulated nervous system, what you need to do is surrender more to Allah. Fall more into Allah, lean in more to Allah, go to Allah more, pray to Allah more. That is how you will ultimately get a more regulated nervous system. Because when we spend more time in worship and in surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are actually exiting slightly this dunya, at least from like a spiritual perspective, right? And we're entering this other dimension because we're now in communication with the ultimate being, right? While we may not directly hear him communicating with us, we know that he is. We know that there's a connection. We know that we're not just praying 5 times a day into nothingness. We know that there is something receiving this worship. We know that there is something accepting our du'as and giving us the forgiveness when we're asking for it and all of these things. So there's a connection that's being established there, and that connection is so incredibly powerful that it can actually help pull us out of the struggles and strives of this dunya, and in that moment creates a very powerful calmness within our bodies. Now, I'm sure quite a few of you have experienced this before, and you might have experienced it either in salah, in dhikr, in dua. It could be when you were doing another type of worship and you were like, I feel it. Sometimes we're not even doing like an active form of worship specifically. Sometimes it'll just feel like that moment of clarity, and it kind of just washes over you, and in that moment you feel it. And I know you've all probably felt it. I have felt it quite a few times in my life. Alhamdulillah, I feel very, very lucky and blessed to have that, and I'm sure you also have. One of the places that a lot of people feel that is in Medina specifically, also Mecca, but Medina more, because energetically I feel like Medina has been, well, we know this, Medina has like a very elevated status as well, because of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when I was in Medina specifically, I felt it. I really felt it. And other people that have gone to Medina and performed Umrah or Hajj, and gone to do tawaf around the Kaaba or something, everybody that I've spoken to about this have felt the same thing. And it's sort of like a deep calm, a deep peace, a deep sense of serenity, a deep that. I don't know what the word for that is, because it's not just peace and calm and serenity. It is belonging and a sense of just being okay and knowing that everything will be okay. It's hard for me to explain. And we can also get it, of course, outside of Medina and Mecca, and we can get it like in our local mosque. We can get it during a conversation where somebody reminds us of something beautiful about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can get it just randomly because Allah wants to give us that reassurance. And we don't have to do anything fancy. We don't have to sit down in a quiet place to breathe deep and stuff. We don't have to do all of the tapping. Again, I have nothing against any of these methods. I use a lot of these methods myself as well. But we can tap into this way of regulating ourselves on a much deeper level that can help us, even as we're adding these other methods of EFT tapping, breathing, hugging a tree, and all these other things, that they can be more effective for us because we have a deeper grounding. So the reason why I think it's a special gift for us as Muslims specifically is because this world, the way that we're going, I don't need to teach you about it. I mean, there's no secret that everyone is getting more and more stressed and anxious, and the world is becoming more and more scary, and a lot of people are losing their ability to connect to anything deeper than themselves. We're becoming more selfish. We become more aggressive. A lot of things are going in the wrong direction, it can seem, right? For the majority of the world. And add to that, the stressor of something like social media and how the algorithm is literally trained to keep us hooked on a screen for hours a day, and that we don't know how to be without it. And listen, I'm not judging or anything, because I feel that myself from time to time, where I'm like, I notice myself almost needing that background noise and needing to scroll, maybe even as I'm making dinner. And it's like, you're making dinner, like, why are you scrolling? And it's because it gives that momentary, almost, it feels like peace, but it is so not peace. It is dopamine. It comes and goes, right? And it dysregulates us further and further and further. And it makes us want what? More and more and more. So there's never a point of contentment. There is never a point of satisfaction. There is never a point of, and this is enough. Think about it. I know that a lot of you have this issue. I personally have this issue as well. Again, so this is not me trying to call anybody out or anything like that. And I will give you a way to get out of this, by the way, as well, in case you're also struggling with this from time to time. But how many of us find ourselves scrolling, especially those of us who have TikTok, because TikTok's algorithm is specifically diabolical. It's just next level. I don't know what they put in that timeline, in that algorithm, but they're really good at it. And so nighttime, especially when everything else is quiet, nobody's calling you, you finished with your work, your responsibilities, and now you're in bed and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm just going to watch a little bit before I go to sleep just to get myself nice and tired. And you're getting tired, but you're wired. Right? Your brain is going, oh, I should do that. Or maybe tomorrow I should, oh my God, that person's life is so beautiful. Oh, wow, I also want to try and do this thing. I want to remind and favorite that video and comment and make, oh my God, this video is making me angry and da 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 da. And so the mind is working. And while we might not feel it like physically necessarily in that moment, or what maybe we feel it, but we're so accustomed to tuning it out and ignoring it, our body is telling us, I'm tired now. I want to go to sleep. But our body is wired. It's wired. No, I can watch another video. No, I can watch another video. Like we might even feel more restless. We might go to bed feeling tired, but then we find ourselves in almost a state of tired awakenedness. It's that wired state that we're tired but wired. So we can feel the fatigue. We know we should be sleeping. We know we've got an early morning. We can feel that we're tired, but at the same time, our eyes are not shutting. And that is because we're stressing our nervous system with all of these different inputs all the time. And then one moment we're happy, the next we're sad, the next minute we're angry, and then we're happy again, and then we're sad, and then we're impressed, and then we're motivated. And our nervous system is just exhausted trying to keep up. It's exhausted trying to keep up. And so we're becoming wired. We're becoming stressed almost before we go to sleep. It's so hard to put that phone away, because what if I miss out on that one video where that information that I've been asking for forever finally shows up, and it's like I'm missing it because I put the phone away. Oh, the stress of having an iPhone. Well, it's not even just an iPhone, it's also a Samsung, I guess. But, of having a smartphone, it's really not helping our nervous system. So this is just one example. There are tons of other examples of how we can dysregulate our nervous system. I'm just trying to use ones that are, what most of us can relate to right now. I found that it was so hard for me to do that. And then going to sleep, it will take me time again to regulate and to find peace in my body and then drift off to sleep. And so this creates for a lot of people like insomnia, feelings of insomnia, even if it isn't insomnia. It might feel like, but it's taken me so long to fall asleep, but you've just woken up your whole entire nervous system. And then you're wondering why you're feeling extra jittery, or you're like restless in your sleep or whatever. One thing that I've done that really helps me a lot is playing the Quran, because it's instantaneous in my body of like, and it's okay, I have Allah. And I actually get better sleep that way as well. When I do that, I actually sleep much better and I wake up better as well. But instead of thinking about, oh, now I need to get up and do a whole tapping exercise, now I need to go and put like an ice pack on my vagus nerve, or like whatever, all these tips and tricks that everybody shares. Sometimes it's as simple as, I'm going to take my tasbih and I'm going to do a little bit of dhikr. I'm going to put my phone on my Quran app and I'm going to play some Quran until I sleep, or as I sleep as well. Any of those things, just have a conversation with Allah, whatever it is, right? Those are the things that we don't necessarily jump straight to when we're thinking about, I'm feeling anxious and nervous. We're thinking like, how do I regulate my nervous system? And everybody's telling you all of these tips and tricks, but very few of them are rooted in religious practices. But it's within the religious practices that we find the deep regulations of our nervous system. I want to share also that as someone who has experienced life without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and now having Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I can tell you that the moment, and I think we're taking this for granted as religious people, what happened to the light? It just disappeared. The sun disappeared. Sorry, I just looked at the screen and I was like, there's no sunshine anymore. Anyway, one of the things that I experienced when I found Allah was that, and really fully surrendered. So it wasn't like just finding Allah the first time and then the regulated nervous system. with practice and with time and with understanding how to surrender and have tawakkul and, experiencing dunya from a place of faith in Allah and having Allah, I have less dysregulation in my nervous system. I still have it. All of us are going to have it. It's not like any of us are going to experience life without any dysregulation to our nervous system, unless we literally live up in a mountain completely isolated, but even then there might be a storm or something, like anything could happen, right? But the point is that we're all going to experience it, and we're all going to have moments where, our nervous system is particularly freaked out and panicked, and then we're going to have times where it's particularly calm. But I've noticed that by having Allah and practicing more my religion and my deen, and taking active steps in reading my Quran, in learning more about Allah and Islam, and taking time to sit in gratitude and in worship, active worship, being not necessarily in salah, but also in salah, but just being in that moment and having that awareness of Allah and my role in this universe. And all of these things is creating a more regulated nervous system than what I had when I didn't have religion in this way. And I believe that it is such a forgotten topic when it comes to nervous system regulation that we are so quick to overlook, because we don't always feel it unless we have to surrender to it. Whereas if we're doing the tapping and we're doing we can feel it on our bodies. And so because it's sort of like very real in our 3D, like the ice pack and stuff like that on our, where do they put it? I think they put it like on the neck or something. I can't remember where they put it. But the point is, we feel that it's such an immediate physical response. We can create the same constantly with our religion and make it a much longer, more satisfying regulation and calming of our nervous system. And I would encourage you, if you are very much into that topic of nervous system regulation and you're trying all of these things, is continue what you're doing. I'm not saying don't do any of those things. As I said, I also do EFT tapping and journaling and breathing and all of those things. And I have my plants that I will go and touch and speak to and stuff. Yes, I am extremely hippy-dippy woo-woo. And I'm not apologetic about it. But when you're in that world, that you don't overlook the power in ultimate regulation of your nervous system through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through religion, through that spiritual. And it's very important that I mention at this point the spiritual connection to religion. It's not just a question of religion, it's the spirituality aspect, the energetic aspect. And this is where we can combine it with sort of the more sort of, okay, we pray. Okay, but praying is one thing. Praying with a connection is another. Making dua is one thing. Making dua and knowing Allah is a different thing. So there has to be that connection. Take the time to create this connection. Take time to cultivate your relationship with Allah, so that you're not just going through the motions of praying, but you're allowing your ruh, your soul, your everything, your whole physical body even, to find calm and peace during salah, and to be able to turn off the rest of the world, even if it's shouting at you and burning all around you, that you're like, but I'm right now with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so as long as I'm here, I don't know, I know some of you have also experienced this before, maybe even all of you. I don't even know if it's exposing myself, but the days when I don't feel like praying, because listen, none of us are perfect, right? There are days where I'm struggling more to come to prayer. And those days I deliberately slow down during prayer. The tempting thing, and I've done it in the past, is I'll rush through the prayer. I'll say the shortest surahs or recite the shortest surahs that I can so I can, just get it over with, right? Astaghfirullah. But it's the truth. So yeah, I'm definitely exposing myself here a little bit, but khair inshallah, because I'm hoping that you will focus on the message that I'm trying to give here by using myself as an example. And that is, when I learned that actually I was making that worse for myself because I felt more stressed, and then I didn't feel satisfied with my prayer, which gave me more anxiety around not wanting to pray, and it didn't feel comfortable for me. It didn't feel satisfactory to me. It was just like, oh, I can't believe I did that, but now I've done it, so I'm just gonna this is the whole stressing out about it and whatever. So I decided to say to myself, try and relax. The time will pass anyway. You might as well pass it in prayer, right? And so I slowed down. Whenever I feel this kind of way of wanting to, I don't feel like praying right now, or whatever, I don't feel like it, or I'm lazy, whatever, I deliberately slow down. I deliberately recite some of the surahs that are a bit longer. I take my time and I breathe through it. And they always end up being the prayers that I find the most peace and serenity in, and connection with Allah in, because I'm actively looking for it, and it's to the point, and I'm sure you've experienced this also before, where it's also the prayers where when you've finished, you don't want to leave. You're almost like, I'm just going to stay here, which I wish I could, but I can't, because I've got 2 dogs in my house and I live in a studio. So, I've taught my dogs to go away when I pray so they don't touch my prayer mat or the clothes that I wear and stuff when I pray. But I wish sometimes I could just stay and just have a nap on my prayer mat after a prayer like that, because I feel so connected and so at peace in that moment because I've slowed down and looked for that connection. Whereas when I'm just praying normally, otherwise, sometimes I don't feel that. Sometimes I don't have that connection and that sort of longing to just kind of stay. And I think we have to make a very active choice in seeking out that connection ourselves. So please don't think that by me sharing this, you're like, oh, I've never felt that. And I pray, but I know. You have to actively also seek it. You have to actively allow yourself to go into that state. You have to actively allow yourself to surrender fully in those moments. And when you do, that peace that comes with it is, as I said, it's not just a momentary calm. It's substantial. And yeah, so anyway, let me not get carried away there. But that's what I wanted to share with you today. I know, as I said, I've got a lot on my feet about regulating your nervous system and what it means and doing all of these tips and tricks and whatever. And I personally have felt that the spiritual and religious aspect has been missing from that conversation for so long. And I don't think it's doing a lot of people any favors, because while the methods that a lot of these people are teaching work, they're still very much rooted in the dunya. A lot of it is still rooted in dunya and the physicality of things, whereas the spiritual connection, as I said, is so much more profound and meaningful and deeper, that you can get a much bigger reset or regulation if you can tap into that part of regulating your nervous system. And that is such a beautiful gift that we have as Muslims, and I don't think we should be taking that for granted. So let me know your thoughts on this. Have you tried this? Do you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about that deep peace and serenity that you feel when you're tapped into that? How it's almost like everything is okay again. Like even the things that stressed you before you had that moment with Allah, it's like, whatever. Like it's fine. It'll be fine. Because again, you've tapped into that place where it's just dunya. It's just dunya. And it's a wonderful place to be. All right, my darling, I hope there was something beneficial for you in this episode. Let me know your thoughts on this subject as well, and share your experiences, your methods to tapping into that connection with Allah as well. Maybe other people will benefit from it as well. And I will see you, inshallah, on next week's episode. But until then, my darling friend, please don't forget to live in in love.